Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Truth Defender podcast. We are coming to you from the greatest country in the world, deep in the heart of the Lone Star State, Dallas, Texas. We really appreciate you guys stopping in. If you guys are watching us on YouTube, please make sure that you guys subscribe and hit that bell icon. Also, make sure that you guys give us a thumbs up. That'll really help us out as well. If you guys are on the go, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, as well as iHeartRadio at the Truth Defender podcast. Also, if you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Defender Podcast, Instagram at Truth Defender Podcast, as well as Facebook, Truth Defender Podcast as well. If you also have any questions for us or comments for myself or our guests, you guys can find us at the Truth Defender 1776 at gmail.com. At this time, we would like to welcome back to the show Mitchell Gerber. Mitchell Gerber is an activist who is raising awareness to help stop the state-mandated and state-endorsed forced live organ harvesting of the Falun Gong in communist China. As China is forcing its way onto the global stage, wreaking havoc and leaving a path of destruction everywhere it rears its ugly head, I found it fitting that we continue to expose the evil communist Chinese regime by bringing their atrocities to light. So, coming to us from Vietnam, Mr. Mitchell Gerber. Mr. Gerber, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, Paul. Thanks for having me on the show, man. I'm always grateful to be with you.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on. I know it's kind of running late out here where I'm at, but for you guys out there, you guys are just getting the day started, so that's great.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a muggy day out here, 100 miles away from the Chinese border, but it's looking good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's obviously we're back again. You were on our episode earlier. I think it was episode 6. I feel like with everything going on right now with the elections and everything that's going on, China is definitely a topic that we have to hit hard and often. Especially with this organ harvesting, and it's not just the Falun Gong. Obviously there's Christians and things like that are out there as well. But I guess if you can kind of give us maybe a little update as to what you've been up to, and anything that's new out there with you guys.
Well, we're making progress. I'm not sure if you saw the 52 pieces of evidence that David Kilgore, David Mattis, and Ethan Gutman, the 3 main investigators,
Right,
confirmed since 2006 that large-scale, legal sanctioned kill to order, folks, kill to order, Paul, forced live organ harvesting. This is not like some kidney in the bathtub story. This is not some this has been done before in Southeast Asia or by ISIS, or even people think it's the Zionists or the Israelis. This is a country like China that no other country in the world has a military the size of a superpower like China compared to the United States,
right.
The second largest economy, the largest number of people, 1.3 billion people. They are legally harvesting from the highest ranking officials of the Chinese Communist Party, leading this final solution campaign, using the Chinese military, the secret police, all levels of economic, social, and political levels. Okay, this is not, again, folks, this is not happening in the United States. This is not happening in South Korea or Pakistan. This is happening on a large scale, never been done by any other government, taking a large group of its people, cutting their organs open while alive, or their bodies while alive, stealing their organs and selling their organs as the healthiest organs in the world illegally without consent. I love it how people come on these talk shows or they comment in the chat rooms as if they know. And the loudmouths, the big jaws, the know-it-alls, the wise guys, they think they're so big and bad. They think they're so in the know, and they make themselves look dumber than everybody else in the room, and they make everybody else dumber than everybody else in the room. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I would advise these kind of people to listen now. Sit back, keep your mouth quiet, and listen, and look at the evidence. Look at what is going on in this world now, particularly, because there is no, and I have to repeat myself, there is no other regime on the face of the earth that has killed over 100 million people, decimated over 5,000 years of Chinese culture, and is killing hundreds and thousands of its innocent citizens a year, Uyghur Muslims, Christians, Falun Gong practitioners, Tibetans, in state-mandated hospitals, cutting out their organs while alive with little or none, or a little anesthesia just to sedate them so they don't fight back, like lobsters in a tank, using the Chinese military, 1/4 of China's gross domestic profit each and every year, established a Gestapo-type office or agency that sits on top of the Chinese Communist Party called the 610 Office that mandates and controls all economic, social, and political policies and mandates in communist China for one person, for one purpose and one intention only: to eradicate Falun Gong, the spiritual movement, to declare war against this innocent spiritual movement that became the largest in all of Chinese history, to make massive amounts of money, a multi-billion-dollar organ harvesting profit, tearing business.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a lot of sayings, Paul and ladies and gentlemen, that many regimes in history killed in order to conquer. The Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, that has controlled China hands down. This is not China. This is not the Chinese civilization. This is not the Chinese government. This is the CCP, has conquered in order to kill. And may I add, Dr. Yan, a virologist expert who defected, who used to work with very high-ranking top officials in the Chinese government, in the secret government agencies. She worked with a top virologist doctor dealing with coronavirus and COVID-19, has come out. I don't know if you saw the interview with Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
That the CCP intentionally man-made the Chinese communist virus to spread it to the world, because they're losing power and they're on the verge of collapse. Their economic, social, and political spectrums are gone, are done, are collapsing. So what they did, they take you to war, or they unleash a bioweapon, the likes we've never seen before, in collaboration with the World Health Organization, the Communist Health Organization that they control, the United Nations, which they control, Bill Gates, who is a globalist scumbag, Henry Kissinger, Rockefeller, George Soros. So anyway, this is where we are, folks.
Yeah, no, I definitely, that virologist, I saw her on Tucker, but I had seen her prior to that interview. I think it was like a month and a half before she even came out on Tucker. She came out on Fox sometime, so I think it was during some kind of day show. And then, you know, when she came out, it was funny because when I was reading, you know, like all the comments on Twitter and Facebook, you know, obviously they didn't want her information getting out, because everybody that I saw in the comments had absolutely no idea that, you know, that she was even out there speaking. They're like, oh, you know, like she just came out with all this information. And I was like, no, actually it came out like a month and a half ago. So that's how you know that they're actually trying to silence her, because, you know, within the comments, nobody had heard anything. Everybody was like, when did this happen? And, you know, so, I mean, obviously they don't want that information getting out. But I mean, you definitely fear for her life. I mean, she's out here. Just because she's in the States doesn't mean that she's safe. You know, I hope they take her seriously and, you know, they actually take care of her, you know, before something happens to her.
You know, she's a hero in her own right. And I loved when she was on Tucker Carlson, whether it was on Fox or right or left. This is not a left or right issue, guys. We're in the fight for our lives. They're trying to destroy us, destroy the Constitution, infiltrate into the West, which they've already done with the communist spectre. There's so much, you know, and I just wanted to read something to you guys about the Epoch Times. It's a great publication out of New York City that's gaining a lot of traction in the world now and a lot of popularity.
Yeah, we just subscribe.
And they haven't. Yes, and it's very easy to subscribe. Yeah. Absolutely, it's great editorial work, phenomenal work. Investigative reports, NTD TV, which is New Tongue Dynasty out of New York. And you have the Epoch Times, and they came out with an editorial which they've just created a TV production about it, and they've also had an audio book, and you can read it for free, about the spectre of communism and how it's ruling our world from the Epoch Times. You just have to type in the spectre of communism ruling our world by the Epoch Times from Google, and you'll just come across it. But I just wanted to read something to you, mentioning communism, because it is a spectre. It's an evil, communist, demonic spectre. It's the devil bent on destroying humanity. And now it is infiltrated into the radical left, as you've seen the radical Marxists, the Black Lives Matter, who don't care about Black lives, the BLM communist cult. It's a minion of the communist regime. It's been funded by the communist regime in terms of weapons. A large shipment was stopped by the CBD, the border patrol.
Yeah.
From over 10,000 mods used in AR-15 sent to Florida and other places, even in Sacramento. Governor Newsom or Northam, one of the California Democratic governors, has been aiding and abetting with the narcos and the Chinese Communist Party to take over America, to destroy Trump, to destroy the Constitution. We have a big rigged system by the Democrats. We are now the radical Marxists. Black Lives Matter, terrorizing, that's the best words we can call it, terrorizing people law-abiding citizens who are just having their meals. You have Antifa blocking streets, beating people up, burning and looting stores. This is communism in its entirety, just fully exposed. And what I wanted to read from you is that since the 1960s, Paul, communism has engaged in a large-scale invasion of American education. On top of that, many young people indulge in television, computer games, the internet, and social media. They get turned into snowflakes, people who lack knowledge, a broad perspective, a sense of responsibility, a sense of history, and the ability to cope with challenges. With communist or communist-derived ideologies instilled in them by their parents' generation, they become indoctrinated and henceforth use a warped framework, liberalism, for evaluating the new facts they see and hear. That is, communist lies have formed a film around them, preventing them from having a clear view of reality. The communist spectre exploits both negative and positive human emotions to allure people into its snares. Most tragic of all is that communist ideology, in addition to human ignorance, selfishness, greed, appeals to its true believers' heartfelt desire for idealism, altruism, and self-sacrifice. That's why many people can be seduced by the lies of socialism and communism is due to mankind abandoning spiritual belief and throwing its moral standards into disorder. Only through righteous faith and moral elevation can humanity safeguard itself against the spectre's demonic manipulation. And that is why you have seen, even with Liberty Hangout, Caitlin Bennett, who used to work with InfoWars, she goes on the campuses. I'm sure you've seen how she has to go with her bodyguards now.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because the liberal, you saw a recent, right? Liberty Hangout, great channel as well. Support her channel. I would definitely implore you to do that. She goes on the liberal campuses, and these people have no idea about how to discuss maturely and upright. They cuss at her, spit at her, attack her, drive her off campus. This is the manifestation of communism, political correctness, the one-child policy, no child left behind, the cancer culture. This is all manifestations, Black Lives Matter, the BLM, which if you go to their charter, you can actually see it's an indoctrination. It is the communist charter. It's the communist manifesto of Marxism and Antifa, anti-fascism. It's all communism. They're the real fascists. They are the real racists. They are the real Nazis, and it all comes from this communist spectre. So, folks, look, I can tell you we've never seen something like this in our country, but it's happening, and so we should really acknowledge this for what it is and call it out for what it is.
Yeah, it's definitely frightening when you think about, some of the top professors and like in universities, things like that, who are far, far left. They deal with your kids on a day-to-day basis, even in high schools, elementary schools, things like that. It was kind of a blessing, maybe a little, that this whole COVID thing happened, because people were forced to take their kids out of school, right? So that kind of slowed everything down slightly. But I mean, if you have the means to do it, I highly suggest that people out there try to homeschool. I mean, it's just public schools in general nowadays are trash. I mean, it's just an indoctrination place, where your kids go and they just kind of feed you or feed them all this crap about Black Lives Matter. I've seen, like, in schools, I've seen pictures on Twitter and stuff like that where they have parents taking pictures of, like, the classrooms that have BLM flags hanging on the door, before they walk in, things like that. It's like they're starting these kids young, 4 or 5 years old, and then onward. I mean, that's pretty much where it starts. I mean, all the kids in school.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this Black Lives Matter is a subtle way. It's just like liberalism is disguised as communism. Socialism is a trap to entangle you and to manipulate your mind in order to control you with the communist spectre, which is a reign of terror that has killed more life than 2 world wars combined. The barbarism, the cannibalism, the evil, despotic nature of the Communist Party infiltrating into the West. You saw the NFL and the NBA. I see on the court, right smack dab in the middle, Black Lives Matter. For God's sake, this is not about a black and white issue. There's no systemic racism. I'm going to be really honest with you. There is no systemic racism.
Yeah.
You are allowed, as a black man, as a white man. I lived in America for 25 years. Blacks, whites. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the most black-owned businesses, police chiefs, celebrities. Jermaine Dupri, who owns So Def Records in Atlanta, Georgia. You've got the FBI there. You've got the CDC. It's a very instrumental and a strategic place of living. But I can tell you, black people have never had it better. White people have never had it better. Americans have never had it better. And it would have gone even better without this globalist plot to destroy America, destroying the fundamental resources and rights of the United States under Barack Obama, who is actually Barry from Honolulu. He wasn't a real president. He was a CIA puppet. And Clinton, Bill Clinton, the rapist, Hillary Clinton, who's a pedophile demon wretch, who's been caught many times with Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was about to expose all these pedophiles, the global elite pedophile rings. Prince Andrew, Clinton, Bill Clinton, it goes really deep. And so, although communism is most obvious at the university level, as you're seeing now with Berkeley and all these liberal university students and university campuses where they're promoting all this communist Marxism and this Black Lives Matter nonsense, which is disguised as communism. They have to sell a narrative, and in order to indoctrinate people and pull at their heartstrings. So it's a big deception, and communism is a deceptor. It's an imposter, and its influence has undermined children's intellectual development and maturity, making them more susceptible to leftist influences in college. It has caused generations of students to have less knowledge and diminished ability to reason and engage in critical thinking. In addition to installing atheism, the theory of evolution, and communist ideology in students, primary and secondary education in the United States employ psychological manipulation that destroys students' traditional beliefs and morals. It instills moral relativism and moral concepts that convey a corrupt attitude towards life. And this occurs, Paul, across all sectors of education. The sophisticated measures used make it almost impossible for students and the public to guard against the trend. So we really have to, as you said, pull our students, pull our kids out of these corporate conditioning and communist-style systems of education that have been going on since the 1960s.
Yeah. With
Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, they've indoctrinated people. And only now, are they really ramping it up because they see how the United States is fragile. We are no longer a nation based on baby boomers, where we know how to fish, we know how to hunt, we know how to take care of our own bank accounts, we are responsible, we know how to dress properly, we know how to conduct business well, we know how to love each other. No. It's all become this communist-style progressivism, modernism, even in the arts, even in the economic, socio-political spectrums. The way we're conducting business, the way we are framing each other to learn how to conduct business is shocking. They don't want entrepreneurs. They do not want leaders. They do not want critical thinkers. They want dumbed down, obedient slaves and how to control them and how to deceive them and how to how's the best way to create lambs or sheep led to a slaughter? Communism, the communist spectre, and yeah. So
no, yeah, no, definitely, it's and you know, like the whole Black Lives Matter thing. You know, I'm sure we're gonna get some kind of crap for it, but it's not to say that we don't care. You know, that Black people are getting killed. You know, things like that. But it's the Black Lives Matter movement is kind of twofold, right? So there's the people that are actually out there protesting and they want change and things like that, which is great. I mean, that's your right. Here in America, you know, many great men and women fought and died for that right, for you to go out and protest and do all those things. That's nobody's saying that you can't do that. But on the other side of it, it's been hijacked as well at the very top. You know, these people are trained Marxists, as in their own words. It's not even me saying it. You know, this is within their own words. Like the main people at the top, and they're using it. You know, they've hijacked it, right? So they're trying to push their agenda on the backside, and they're pulling at the heartstrings of all these people, because you know there's kind of nothing going on. And you know, here in the States, everything was going great. You know, we had money coming in the stock market, everybody had jobs, everything was going great. So they kind of figured, well, we need to ramp something up, you know, before the elections come out, to try to get Trump out. I mean, that's the only reason why this whole thing started. I mean, it's obviously tragic when anybody gets killed, you know, but more people have died during this whole Black Lives Matter thing in the past 4 or 5 months that were Black than, you know, had been killed by cops or anybody else. So they weren't helping anybody. They're actually killing their own people. And, you know, what about those Black cops, you know, that they were getting murdered as well? Do their lives not matter because, you know, they're Black? Or is it just because they're cops that nobody gives a shit? And what about all the kids that get murdered in New York, Chicago, you know, freaking Baltimore, LA, that are Black, that are murdered by other Black people? I never hear a damn thing about that. I don't see LeBron James out there fucking protesting in LA because freaking gangbangers were out there murdering other Black people. Nobody cares. So that's how you know that it's all fake. It's total bullshit.
well, that's the thing. They have been indoctrinated by the communist spectre. They have been controlled. It's very hard to see it. It's extremely difficult to see it. Even the jihadist Islamic extremist origins come from communism as well.
Yeah.
The communism, evil communism, and that is why I implore your listeners and your viewers to read the Epoch Times, how the spectre of communism is ruling the world. Because with Black Lives Matter, it's not a Black Lives Matter movement. It is a communist movement. You see their charter, you see the way they behave, you see the way they act. This is all communist-style terrorism, okay? This is not normal. This is not Martin Luther King. This is not Coretta Scott. This is not even Malcolm X. This is not even Black Panthers.
Yeah.
The Black Panthers never operated like this. They protected themselves from violence. We've had a serious genocide in America with Planned Parenthood. That's another thing. If Black Lives Matter concern, and then we'll go on to Falun Gong, because I don't want to really, but I think it's important to hear about this. But
yeah.
To call it for what it is, Antifa and Black Lives Matter do not care about America. They're anti-America. They're anti-rights. They will harm and hurt, rape, pillage, and plunder, to destroy people, to terrorize people, go into law-abiding neighborhoods, wake people up, try and steal their property, burn people's houses down, even shoot Black owners who support Trump. You know, and this is ridiculous. And if they really cared about Black lives as we do, as I do, they would be protesting Planned Parenthood for 100,000 to 400,000 Black babies who are killed each and every year. Oh, but the liberals are like, my body, my choice. I don't care about killing a child, as long as I have fun and as long as I don't take responsibility for it. I'm like, well, listen, guys, then what about the Chicago and Philadelphia and Detroit and the 14 Black children who were killed from gang violence? What about all the deaths on black? Why aren't you taking care of that?
Yeah.
They don't care. They're not interested. So this is the problem. They just want to defund the police, but it's the very police force, black cops, white cops, that are killed in action protecting black people. Yeah. Okay, I mean, there are crooked cops out there, and there are rotten cops. Okay, but there are also gangsters out there that kill cops. In the last month, how many black people were killed? 9. In the last month, how many white people were killed? 14 by cops. And how many cops were killed? Over 30.
Yeah.
So when you look at the statistics and you look at the facts, which these radical leftist liberals do not want to, the radical left do not want to look at the facts, the logic, the truth, the scientific evidence. Even with transgenderism, you want to be a transgender person, go ahead. But don't you dare indoctrinate and force the confusion of children to think that there's more than 2 genders. There's 2 genders, scientifically, biologically, religiously. You don't have to go even to the God debate. And I'm a firm believer in God. However, you could be an atheist. But scientifically, there's no scientific proven evidence that there's more than 2 genders. That's also communism, destroying the family, destroying the mindset, destroying the children's traditional values of understanding what is right and what is wrong. This is a communist specter that's infiltrated onto all levels of government and all levels of society. And it's coming from the playbook of the Chinese Communist Party's constitution. Yeah. If you know, and this is where we are now, folks. And even like I said, radical jihadism, the ISIS, the radical extremism have communist origins. Even though communism failed to establish control over the Muslim world, it did much to influence the creation and development of contemporary Islamic extremism. Following the 9/11 attacks, the threat of Islamic extremism gained prominence with the actions of Osama bin Laden and his Al-Qaeda terrorist group becoming front-page news. But the ideological source of bin Laden's Islamic extremism can be traced back to a man who has been described as the Karl Marx of radical Islam. So they go hand in hand together. Evil sticks together. Birds of a feather stick together.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, these freaking Chinese, man, they have their head everywhere. You know, they're sticking their nose in all different kinds of places, it seems like. And yeah, I mean, so we were actually supposed to have Mr. Gutman on the show a while back. I mean, the first time when you came on, we were supposed to have him on as well. But that was kind of the time when they had that whole issue with the book. The Bloody Harvest was actually appearing like on all the Wayfair sites and like Amazon, things like that. They were having some kind of issue with it, where they were, I guess there was that time when they were actually finding that they were selling children online through Wayfair and stuff like that. And in one of the ads, they actually had that book, A Bloody Harvest, like in the background. So they were trying to figure out like how that ended up there, like what was going on. So we weren't actually able to have him on the show because he was kind of going through that whole thing at the time. But hopefully, eventually we'll have him back on sometime down the line. But yeah, I mean, so I guess you live close to the China border there. I mean, do you guys have any kind of plans of getting back in there, or is it you guys are just kind of stuck and hopefully you can work through other means there?
There are some very big developments that are happening, and with the Chinese Communist Party man-making the virus, Trump fully knows what's going on. They are trying to go to war. The communist regime is collapsing. The CCP is on the verge of complete collapse, politically, economically, and socially. I'm not sure if your listeners also watch Crossroads by Joshua Phillips. It's an editorial YouTube channel, which is great, Crossroads from Joshua Phillips. But there are confirmed reports coming out more and more about the Chinese Communist Party. It's blown open. There's no hiding it anymore. What I've been doing for 20 years, folks, is coming to the front lines now. There's no hiding it. There's no denying it. There's no refuting the evidence. And to understand, Paul, to understand how organ harvesting can happen in China, it's very important to know that there's no limit to how far the Chinese Communist Party will wipe out someone or something. From the Tiananmen Square massacre, killing and mutilating and slaughtering hundreds of students, to wiping out 5,000 years of Chinese culture, destroying 100 million people, the one-child policy, which is forcefully using children, forcefully aborting thousands and thousands and millions of innocent Chinese girls. That's why the population of Chinese men and Chinese women are so distorted. I mean, really so distorted. You have harvesting of organs from Falun Gong practitioners, from the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, not only Jiang Zemin, who was the evil head and military dictator in 1999, but President Xi, reducing populations of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang, in Urumqi province, which Ethan Gutman would talk about. I was on a podcast with Dr. Enver Totti, who is the main campaigner for forced organ harvesting, and Dr. Professor Sadiq, who does his genocidal studies on the Uyghur Muslims. And when I was hearing these men talking about how the communist regime within 3 or 4 months just reduced populations from 12 million to 8 million, forcefully blood testing people, turning people into robots, stealing the blood from tortured children, tortured Falun Gong practitioners' children, because most of their parents are locked up in labor camps, re-education centers. 254 at least labor camps that were created under the Chinese Communist Party when the crackdown and complete ban of the Falun Gong movement started in 1999. 1 month before 1999, of July, on June 1999, as I said before earlier, that the communist regime created the 610 office that sits still now on top of the communist-style system party, governing and controlling and dominating all levels of government to control and destroy the Uyghur Muslims, the Falun Gong, and others for their organs, to make a multi-billion-dollar business. And when the persecution of Falun Gong began on July 20, 1999, 100 million people were practicing, Paul, 1 out of every 10 Chinese national citizens. The Chinese regime basically declared war on Falun Gong. And Falun Gong is a spiritual movement. If people don't understand what it is, how about we just play one of those clips so you can get a little bit of more understanding about what's going on by the investigators.
Sure. Let's see, you want to start with clip 2? We can start from there.
Clip 2, let's do clip 2, yeah.
Okay, let's take a sec here.
Just to give your audience a perspective.
Absolutely. Let me take a look. All right, here we go.
A rather upsetting issue, allegations that have repeatedly been aired that China plays a part in harvesting organs, mainly of executed prisoners. The numbers run to thousands every year. The organs then get sold on for transplants. It's always been vehemently denied by the Chinese government. But here in Britain, representatives of a campaign called Forced Organ Harvesting have been looking at the issue, and they've got as far as presenting their latest findings to the British Parliament. 2 representatives join us here in the studio. Welcome to David Kilgour, former member of the Canadian Parliament, and Ethan Gutman, author of several books on China, who've both been involved in the investigations, are here to tell us a little bit more. David Kilgour, if I could start with you, what are the latest findings of your investigation? What are you closing in on?
That about 65,000 Falun Gong practitioners have been killed and their organs trafficked. There are other people too, convicted prisoners are killed, of course, but the thing that we're focusing on is the Falun Gong community. My colleague Ethan Gutman has done a lot of work on the Uyghur community. He'll probably want to say something about that, but yeah, there's no doubt. We have 52 kinds of evidence that this is happening. To give you the easiest example, the wife of a surgeon told us that her husband had removed the corneas from 2,000 Falun Gong practitioners in a 2-year period. So, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt in anybody's mind. We've got 2 books on it. We've got all kinds of.
And these, just to clarify, these come after judicial executions?
No, there's no judicial involvement in virtually all of the Falun Gong. That's the thing that nobody understands.
Okay, right. So we better clarify this, because we often cover the fact that China, of course, has one of the highest rates of execution, judicial execution. It's their choice. That's what they do. And they're always there in the top three, along with Saudi Arabia and Iran. But this is something different.
Exactly. It's because a police signature is all you need to get sent to a forced labor camp. And then basically what happens is somebody from, it could be London, it could be Canada, goes over there for a liver. And there's a computer bank, and it says there's a match for you out in camp number 50. And somebody's dragged out of camp number 50 into an operating room. Their liver's taken out of them. It's flown to Shanghai, where you're probably waiting for your liver. And you come back to London with a new liver, and somebody has been killed like a lobster in a grotesque restaurant.
Hang on a minute. So you're not even saying, because, I mean, it's one issue, the judicial executions and the use of the cadaver, which I suppose in a certain legal sense is the property of the state once the state has killed the individual. But you're saying these are people being killed to order?
Precisely. And it's so, as you say, your horror shows how distressing it is. But yet it never gets mentioned that these are people who've been maybe giving out pamphlets asking them to stop killing Falun Gong, and they're guilty of nothing.
The allegation and our findings are shocking. I mean, to us, this is a form of evil we have yet to see on this planet. This is a new form of evil. I'm David Maidith, and with me is David Kilgore. We've been asked to investigate allegations that there has been harvesting of organs of Falun Gong in China. That the donors, the Falun Gong donors, are unwilling, then they have been executed in the process, either for the purpose of the transplants or after the transplants, and that their bodies are cremated. That was the allegation we were asked to investigate. David Kilgore is a former member of Parliament and former cabinet minister for Asia Pacific, and I'm a Winnipeg lawyer doing immigration, refugee, and international human rights law in Winnipeg. We were asked to investigate this allegation by the coalition against, well, it's a coalition investigating allegations of persecution, coalition to investigate the persecution of Falun Gong in China, which is based in Washington, D.C. We were asked to do this a couple months ago, and we have now done our investigation, and we're producing this report. We were not paid. We were doing this as volunteers, and we're not associated officially with anyone. We're just acting independently from everyone and doing this investigation. We pursued every investigative trail we could find. In the report, you will see that there are 18 different avenues of proof and disproof we considered and evaluated. Our bottom line conclusion, after considering everything as best we could, was that the allegations are true. We believe them to be true, that this harvesting is indeed happening. That conclusion comes not from any one of these different 18 categories of evidence that we looked at, but by assessing everything all together. All together, they paint a whole picture. All the evidence we looked at either corroborated the allegations, or in some cases where we were looking at possible disproof, did not disprove the allegations. We do know for a fact that the Falun Gong are depersonalized, dehumanized, and marginalized, repressed, persecuted, both in word and in deed, in the most vile ways possible. For this sort of allegation to be true in Canada would involve a very large step from where we are. But in China, it's not that big a step from where China has been.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, it is very rough.
Yeah, it's just the one thing that, I mean, obviously, if it's happening within the borders of China, if they control, the news and what gets out, obviously a lot of people wouldn't know about it outside of China, even, but I mean, the fact that you have people going in, doing research, bringing out their findings, writing books, things like that, and still like nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares. You don't hear it anywhere. I mean, if it wasn't for finding people like yourself, you would never know. I mean, at all.
Well, Ethan Gutman, you're right. And see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I mean, you don't know how many times for the last 20 years I've been trying to get on other people's podcasts. I mean, on Twitter, on large media outlets from the left to the right, and no one's come back. And You know, Ethan Gutman said one time, he's the China watcher and investigative reporter who also wrote The Slaughter. He was asked, well, what do you say to those people who still doubt that organ harvesting has occurred or is occurring on a large scale in China, especially through the use of Falun Gong practitioners? The dogs bark, the caravan moves on. Look, The Slaughter, my book, has been out for a year. That's plenty of time for serious reviewers to question my conclusions. I can't think of one who has. Even the South China Morning Post, which obviously had to give a critical review given their financial relationship with the mainland, didn't dare. And I stand by every footnote, every interview. I don't begrudge anyone the right to doubt. As I say in my book, these are serious allegations, toxic allegations. But no one has the right to dismiss the allegations without actually reading the corpus of work that has been published. The Slaughter, Bloody Harvest in State Organs by David Kilgore and David Mattis, not to mention all the investigative reports that have been authored by the Epoch Times, the World Organization to Investigate the Persecution of Falun Gong, and Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. This investigation started in 2006, yet the volume of investigative work is only increasing. You want to comment? Hit the books. If someone is too lazy to read about this subject, or just doesn't care enough about Chinese atrocities to bother, perhaps they should keep silent. So this is what, yeah. He said, how do you rate Western media's coverage of China's political situation and the country's human rights issues? Pretty lousy, but I'm not personally cross with individual reporters. Quite frankly, the internet has ruined attention spans and journalism budgets. Even those reporters who want to do serious stories aren't given the leeway to do so anymore. But there's a really good documentary called Hard to Believe, and Hard to Believe can be watched on YouTube for free. It's about a 56-minute documentary, Hard to Believe, that covers everything entirely about what is going on. And you know, Paul, for those who don't know what Falun Gong is, Falun Gong became the largest spiritual movement in China. It's a Chinese spiritual discipline in the Buddhist tradition. It's pronounced Falun Gong, and it consists of moral teachings, a meditation, 4 gentle exercises, and that are truly unique. And you know, many people were initially drawn to Falun Gong because of its healing effects. I practiced for a long time. I'm a martial artist, and I work out every day. I'm kind of that kind of jock mentality. I like to work out. I like to get up in the morning. I like to eat well. And I was only looking for something that was very cool. I come from a Judeo-Christian family. I believe in God, but I'm not religious. I'm more spiritual, and I actually I feel more attracted and influenced by the way of life, natural, organic, nonchalant, nothing forceful, nothing dogmatic.
Right.
So Falun Gong's popular appeal was because it's very simple and straightforward. It's free. It's not fanatical. It's not extremist. It's not radical. It's not like a cult that expands its evil influence, like Scientology.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big cult. Okay, and what they've been doing and how people have come out and talked about how bad it was. The Falun Gong is a spiritual organic practice. I'm sure people have heard about how there's media agencies tied to Falun Gong, like the Epoch Times. There have been many Falun Gong practitioners who started the Epoch Times. When the Epoch Times started, I was right there delivering newspapers. And why? Because there's a serious, brutal persecution, ladies and gentlemen, against the spiritual practice. These people are killed in labor camps and are being killed for their organs, for God's sake. Millions of people locked up in detention centers, labor camps. The entire Chinese Communist Party and its entire economic, social, and political realms are dedicated to destroy this innocent spiritual practice. So what is so bad having a performance art show like Shen Yun, which is a beautiful spiritual show, 5 out of 5 theatrical stars, Broadway critics, high-ranking theater goers, producers, directors all around the world who have gone and seen Shen Yun. This is a performance arts show together with the Epoch Times, an editorial news media agency out of New York, as well as ETV, that has funded videos and production to expose the Chinese Communist Party, as well as funding, giving large amounts of donors to Donald Trump, because Trump is fighting against communism. You can say what you like about Trump. You know, I'm a political atheist in terms of, I don't genuflect in terms of Republican or Democrat. But when you see a man, even though he's been a businessman, okay, he's not a pedophile. He hasn't raped anybody like Bill Clinton. And they've demonized him into thinking that he's a racist. He's not a racist. But the Epoch Times gave a large amount of money to his campaign and still do. Why? Because he's combating against the Chinese Communist Party. He's the only president in how many decades that has fought against the Chinese Communist Party. And that is why we have to support Trump. He has to win. I'm not, like I said, he's not a saint, but he's a good man, and he's a good-hearted man, and he's doing the right thing, and he's trying to do the right thing. He supports Falun Gong. He supports the religious freedom in China. He supports Hong Kong that's being invaded by China. He supports the Uyghur Muslims who have been slaughtered as well, and their population has been reduced under the presidency of President Xi. I mean, it's so evil. And so if anybody, Barack Obama hasn't done that. Barack Obama, Joe Biden, they're all under the communist, in bed with the communist Chinese. Google, Facebook, Yahoo, YouTube. Hell, they're suspending journalists. They've suspended Dr. Yan, who wrote a report about the Chinese Communist Party. Yeah. Twitter suspended her account.
As soon as she came out on Tucker, she was gone, like right afterwards.
Gone. They terminated my Facebook account because I put on these videos. I'm shadow banned. I'm demonetized. So, you know, and then they turn around, these people, and have the audacity to say, oh, no. We're just trying to protect other people. Protect them from what? The truth?
You can see people getting killed on Twitter. There's porn on Twitter. There's all kinds of crap on Twitter. What about that kind of stuff?
I mean, look at the Communist Health Organization. Look at the World Health Organization. Yeah. Dr. Francis Boyle, who is a biological weapons warfare expert, who wrote the draft. He drafted into law the Bioweapons Act of 1989 that was passed by the House and the Congress under President George Bush. He came out in the early stages, even before Dr. Yan, about how this was made by the communist regime. And the World Health Organization is aiding and abetting. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, Tedros is the Secretary General. He's the leader of the World Health Organization. Why did China push so hard for this guy? The ex-revolutionary tenure is merely part of a broader CCP strategy. Okay, this guy was the perfect puppet for China. Okay. Because his Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front was already a patsy for the CCP. Addis Ababa, where Tedros is from, now we're talking about the Secretary General, the leader of the communist regime, China, the World Health Organization, the WHO, which is a strong arm to the United Nations, which basically is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. China, the communist regime, already leads 4 of the United Nations specialized agencies, while no other country leads more than 1. Okay, and Addis Ababa, where the director of the World Health Organization, Tedros, is from, is known as the city that China built. Okay, the degree of Chinese ownership extends throughout the country, and when the Ethiopian Djibouti railway was built, the Export-Import Bank of China backed the project with $3.3 billion in loans and 400 Chinese investment projects valued at more than $4 billion in the country. And once ushered in as Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros quickly repaid China's support. The first day after his election, he expressed support for the Chinese Communist Party's claim over Taiwan. Not long after, he appointed brutal dictator Robert Mugabe, a China ally, as a goodwill ambassador. Now, you know what Robert Mugabe has done to Zimbabwe in a move that is described by diplomats as an obvious payoff. This support was quickly reciprocated. China decided to fund a new $18 million World Health Organization Center for Disease Control in Ethiopia. China has even boasted, about its almost takeover of the World Health Organization. In 2017 alone, it signed an agreement with the World Health Organization for its One Belt, One Road initiative, co-chaired the China-Africa Health Ministers Conference and hosted the Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation during the Chinese Communist Party's pledge of $8.8 billion to developing countries to improve the people's well-being worldwide. So folks, if you can see this, link the dots, connect the dots. Okay?
Follow the money.
Follow the money, okay? So that's why I say before, Paul, before any of your of these idiots that come on these trolls, they come, I mean, because they're nothing but trolls. I'm sorry, a couple of them. They come into your platforms, they come into the forums, they come into the channel comments, and they run their mouth as if they know. Oh, this is a Zionist. Look at him. How you got to be careful how how he's trying to infiltrate. I know Zionists. I'm not a CIA-backed operative. I don't work for Israel. I'm a lone warrior, man. Okay, I'm a spiritual person. My name is Mitch Gerber. I'm not backed by the CIA or FBI, pal. I'm not a Zionist. So get off your high horse and shut your freaking mouth and learn. Grow up. Stop being a patsy. Yeah. Stop being a hack yourself. Stop being a troll. You know what I'm saying, Paul? You got a lot of them like that.
Yeah, nobody. It's always easier just to shit on people like online, right? But nobody wants to open a book. Nobody wants to read stories, investigate stories. It's just faster just to shit on people online. That's just how it is, And yeah, you get it all the time. Well, that's everywhere.
Well, that's why we call them trolls. And that's why when people see, and then when I enter into debate with these people, they don't come back to the party. They can't handle it. Then I'll start throwing mud, swear words, attacks, slandering. I'm like, where's your evidence? Yeah. Where's your evidence? And I give them the evidence over and over and over and over again, and they don't. They blow up in your face with slurs and attacks and groundless accusations. And I'm like, and liberal logic, and communist logic, and I'm thinking, Go back to school, little boy or little girl. Go back to school.
Yeah.
Grow up.
It's always, online, everybody's quick to say something. You're sitting behind a screen and you're not sitting in front of that person. You can just say whatever you want with no consequences, pretty much. And it's like, I mean, you see that happen, and you go into these people's accounts, and these accounts were created like 2 days before. There's like no posts on them, so they're just to shit on people for no reason. It's dumb.
Well, the Chinese Communist Party actually has people that sit in these. They pay them to be on Twitter, to shadow ban, to hack into, to post comments that are just ridiculous. Yeah. But again, coming back to the Falun Gong and the organ harvesting, let me give you facts. Yep. Not logic, liberal logic, but facts. On March 9th, 2006, the second day after allegations were reported in the international media that has been covering it up for the longest time, and Steve Bannon on the War Room as well, and Owen Schroyer and InfoWars, which I take my hat off to. I've been on there. We're talking about how the international bankers, the globalist cabal, George Soros, Henry Kissinger, the Wall Street bankers, for the longest time now have been making a fortune off the blood slavery and the blood transfusion of the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, as early as 2014, $900 billion of foreign direct investment was flooding into the shores of China for the slave labor, for the institutionalized slave labor that has funded the consumer market, that has made us into consumer slaves with Walmart and Target and Nokia, okay, and IKEA. And I'm thinking, come on, guys. And so the facts are all there, just people have to learn it. And through our continual effort over the course of the last dozen years, the World Organization to Investigate the Persecution of Falun Gong has investigated even China's most senior leadership including 5 former standing committee members of the Central Politburo, a former vice chairman of the CCP Central Military Commission, a former minister of national defense, a former minister of commerce, and a former health minister of the General Logistics Department of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. And they've conducted investigations targeting 891 organ transplant hospitals, over 9,000 organ transplant surgeons and specialists, multiple rounds of searches and analysis from hundreds of thousands of media reports, medical papers, cached hospital web pages and databases. Our investigation has gathered the CCP's criminal evidence for more than 2,000 telephone investigations, as well as over 10,000 items of data evidence as of 2015, folks. 44 investigative recordings, over 1,800 items of data evidence. And the investigations we've reached concluded this: since 1999, under the direct leadership of the former top leader, military dictator, and president of China, Jiang Zemin, the Political and Legal Affairs Commission of the 610 office, the Gestapo type office that has created, that sits on top of the Chinese Communist Party system that controls all governmental, economic, social, and political education systems and modules and reports and legal policies and mandates, has been controlling the state apparatuses, including the party, the government, the military, the armed police, and the justice and health systems, having been carrying out a nationwide genocidal massacre of Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghur Muslims, Christians, and Tibetans in an organized, cold genocide manner through live organ harvesting transplant surgeries in China. And this is a state crime of genocide and a crime against humanity that is occurring nowhere else in the world. So there we go.
Yeah, and you can, like I mentioned, you trace the money, right? So they're making all that money, and that money is filtering in all over the world, really. I mean, you could see a lot of it here in the States, like you mentioned earlier, but with the Border Patrol, you know, that they were actually stopping all that kind of stuff. You had at the time when George Floyd happened, they found, I think it was like $900,000 worth of counterfeit money that was actually caught at the border in Minnesota, as well as fentanyl and stuff like that coming in through China or from China here into the States. So, I mean, it's, while that's happening out there, all that money that they, you know, they receive through it, it just gets filtered out, you know, everywhere. For a lot of funding, you know, they're funding a lot of issues here that we see now, like you mentioned, weapons, things like that. So, yeah, it's pretty shitty.
While we play the next clip about, because I don't think we have much time, but Edward Macmillan Scott is the 3 times vice president of the European Parliament.
Okay, go ahead and play that.
And
3.
It's a great clip.
All right, here we go.
Shed some light on the subject.
Yeah, here we go.
Edward Macmillan Scott.
Thank you very much indeed, Peter. I wrote a report on EU-China relations in 1996-7 for the Foreign Affairs Committee, and returned to Beijing in 2006, where I met ex-prisoners of conscience, Falun Gong practitioners, as well as made contact with a number of other dissidents and reformers. All the Chinese with whom I had contact were then imprisoned, and in some cases, like Gao Zhisheng, tortured. Gao Zhisheng is a Christian human rights lawyer, very, very well known in China, who investigated the persecution of Falun Gong and wrote reports about it. And one of the people I met, Cao Dong, who'd been in prison, told me the story about how his best friend had disappeared one evening from the cell in their prison. And the next time he saw him, it was his body in the prison hospital with holes where body parts had been extracted. The belief that I have, and I share with David Kilgour, that organ harvesting is widespread in China, and it is restricted almost exclusively to Falun Gong practitioners. The only prisoners in China who are routinely blood tested and blood pressure tested are Falun Gong practitioners. The organ transplant industry is in the hands of the military. The People's Liberation Army is responsible for the
hospitals, the transportation of body parts, and the sale of them. It is therefore a governmental activity and constitutes genocide under Article 2 of the Genocide Convention. It is as serious as that. And my final word is, with respect to you, Peter, the Falun Gong are to the Chinese regime of today what the Jews were to the Nazis during the war. And we should all take note of this and look at China with new eyes. The European Parliament comes from a very diverse background, and as Peter has already said, even within this quite straightforward resolution, there are still problems, because the absolute deluge of propaganda from the regime in Beijing, vilifying Falun Gong as some sort of extremist cult. Now, I've met, as I said, hundreds of members of Falun Gong. It is not a sect, it is not a cult, there is no money involved, there is no brainwashing. All the normal characteristics of a cult simply don't exist. These are people who practice their spiritual exercises on their own, and yet, as I said, because between 70 and 100 million people in 1999 were practicing Falun Gong, this was seen by Jiang Zemin, then the leader of the Communist Party, as a threat to his own position. It wasn't, of course, but he saw the opportunity of creating an enemy within. Just as during the war, the Nazis singled out the Jews as a special characteristic and did what they did to the Jews. The same is happening today to Falun Gong in China. That is why it is genocide. That's why I say it's so serious. As to whether we can convey this to all the members of the European Parliament, it's quite difficult. It is quite difficult, but we're trying, and that's what this press conference is about. There'll be other activities today and beyond. I will maintain my campaign, especially until the people I had contact with are released from prison. On the question of Manfred Novak and his reports and his attempts to try and get to the truth about this situation in China, he's told me that he believes that more than 2/3 of the prisoners in China in re-education through labor or forced labor camps are Falun Gong practitioners. That is a huge number of people. Now, at the end of the Kilgour-Matus report, you will see a list of more than 3,000 Falun Gong practitioners who have died under torture. To the regime, those are wasted people, but nevertheless, they have died under torture in the prison camps. I've met hundreds of Falun Gong who've been through this terrible process of escalating torture. I believe that we should, in Europe, now set up something like happened in West Germany during the Cold War at Salzgitter, where an impunity index was maintained of confidential denunciations from East Germany under communist rule against torture and maltreatment. And after reunification, a number of prosecutions followed of those people. And what we need in the world today is an impunity index maintained at an international level, in my view, by the EU in conjunction with the International Criminal Court, so that people in China or other countries where there's repression may make confidential denunciations, and having talked to ex-prisoners, they tell me that the one thing that gave them some hope was that one day the torturers would be brought to account. Now, in the report of David Kilgour, Matus, those 3,000 Falun Gong practitioners who've died, in those cases, it has been established where they were arrested, where they were imprisoned, who did the torture. That is listed, and that's a fundamental point. And we should never, ever give up on the idea that one day justice will be done. Thank you.
It was very telling.
Yeah, I mean, besides toppling, the regime, I mean, what can you do, really? I mean, there's not much that anybody can do from the outside. I mean, or is there?
Not much. And as you have seen now with the man-made virus, I mean, just think about that. Think about with Dr. Yan's testimony and evidence on Tucker. I mean, it blew us away, it blew me away. But I knew it. It's all coming out. Man-made. So to deliberately make a virus to kill and cause, look how much damage, over 100 to over 150,000. Trump knows full well, the administration knows full that the Communist Party is behind the virus. Think about it. Dr. Yan went on Tucker. Who do you think was watching? Think about who's watching. Who's watching us? Out of all the people, who's watching? Always be very be conscious of who's watching. That's why I took the gloves off, guys. I'm not politically correct here. I will speak my mind, and I will tell you how I feel. So help me God, even if it's my last breath today, and I will be shot in the head. I will die for what I believe in, and I'm not radical. I'm not a Zionist again. I'm not CIA backed. I'm not even military. I haven't ever done military service. Okay, I went on my own for the last 20 years of my life. I'm not a perfect individual. I'm doing the best. You know, I bleed the same blood as everybody. I breathe the same air as you. Yet you have to stand on the right side of destiny now. And including this man-made intentional virus has been aiding and abetted by Bill Gates. Now they're pushing out vaccines. Okay, the Western companies are allegedly involved in complicit in the Chinese Communist Party's organ transplant scandal. 20 global companies profiting from China's transplant trade. Only between, I think, 4 and 7 countries in the entire world have banned organ tourism. The first one to actually ban organ tourism was Israel. The Knesset and the Sanhedrin, the Rabbinic Council, together with Jacob Levy, who is the president of the Transplantation Society in Tel Aviv, his family was in the Holocaust. Okay, these are upright people who know what it means to suffer. These are not Zionists or globalist cabal or Bilderberg groups or Illuminati or Freemasons or whatever you want to call them, the global pedophile elites. These are innocent, good people, whether you're Israeli, whether you're Taiwanese, whether you're Pakistani, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Jew, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're atheist, whether you're Christian, you're a good person. Doesn't matter, because your soul and your heart are in your keeping. And it depends on whether you want to be responsible to yourself and others by standing on the right side of destiny. But these people who have stood on the wrong side of destiny and are aiding and abetting the Chinese Communist Party and the globalist cabal, covering up the lies, covering up the crimes, covering up lying for a living and covering up crimes like fake news CNN and MSNBC and NBC and the World Health Organization and the United Nations, covering up the crimes. Not everybody in the World Health Organization, not everybody in CNN, not everybody in these media agencies, but most of these people who are criminally complicit, consciously complicit, or are just out of fear and are programmed MK Ultra or 5G, because with the 5G technology, you know who you should have on your show is Cyrus Parser. Look into Cyrus Parser and the AI organization. He would talk about all that, the biotech, right, and how they were using weapons to infiltrate the minds and zap the mind in a certain way, and neuro-linguistic programming. Now they're using it in the pickup artist community, and they're using it in this way, and they use psychological triggers to trigger the mind. It's all 5G, it's all AI, it's all this demonic way of twisting and manipulating the mind to get what you want. Right. Product placement. What is marketing? Marketing is the art of manipulation. Getting someone to do what you want them to do in a way that they don't know how, or they don't want to, but you're getting them to do it it's a very demonic kind of way. There's no honesty anymore. There's no sincerity anymore. Yeah. There's no truth anymore. And the ones who are speaking the truth and are getting the word out are all getting banned, suspended, and terminated and demonized, as some kind of doomsdayer. Look at Alex Jones. Look at InfoWars. How many... Brian Rose at London Real. Yeah,
no, I definitely think that. So, like you mentioned, always be aware of who's listening. Obviously, we actually had Leo Zagami on, and that interview just went to shit. Like somebody was messing with our internet signal. We just couldn't get through the whole interview, and we had to stop it. Obviously he was talking about a lot of sensitive stuff, but mostly China. During that time, and they just wrecked the entire interview. We had to cut it short because we just couldn't get through anything. And it really sucked because one, he's extremely busy, so for him to take the time was great. But I couldn't get through any of the questions that I wanted, and we couldn't discuss any of the topics that we had to. They just shut that entire thing down. I mean, I believe that's what happened because that whole interview from the start was just messed up from the beginning. But I mean, we'll have to have him back on. It's definitely a shit show, when that whole thing happens. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing we can do besides try to get the word out. If they want to stifle you, you just have to yell louder. You have to be the loudest one in the room. We got to do whatever it takes at this point in time, just to get everything out.
Listen, man, you have about 40 days before chaos in America. I mean, they are not going to stop. They want to destroy everything in America. This is communism at its fullest peak of invasion before it completely collapses. Now, I can tell you one thing: the Communist Party is going to collapse. Black Lives Matter, this communist movement, these minions, the Antifa, they are not going to survive. Just like ISIS did not survive. If you're going to stand on the wrong side of destiny and you think you're going to invade Trader Joe's just the other day because they want to protest lack of black access to grocery stores, I mean, for God's sake, this is ridiculous. These are psyops. These are just like how these kids have been brainwashed in MK Ultra to go into schools and just shoot them up, or to kill 30 innocent gay people in a nightclub. Yeah. This is all psyops to take away guns, render people helpless, and they almost achieved it. And if with Joe Biden, creepy Joe Biden, a pedophile in his own right, look how creepy he is with children. I mean, he doesn't even know where he is anymore. And Kamala Harris, who's a slave, comes from slave traders. I mean, and who has caused so much disgusting and degradation in her own communities. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi.
Even her own.
These people. I mean, these people are disgraceful. These people I wouldn't let leave me across the street. Yeah. Okay, I wouldn't trust him with my children. I wouldn't trust him with 1 cent. I wouldn't trust him with animals. I wouldn't trust him, like I said, to leave me across the goddamn street. But Gerald Celente said one thing from the Trend Institute. He said, when people lose it and they have nothing else to lose and left to lose, they'll lose everything. They'll lose it. And that's what you're seeing right now in the communities, and they're riling it up. And now they are infiltrating sports and infiltrating children books and The Simpsons and all this kind of. I'm like, guys, this is step-by-step processes. Cancel culture, canceling Escobar pies.
Aunt Jemima.
Aunt
Jemima's gone.
Jesus. And then NASCAR, when they had to have a re-education class for all white drivers. I mean, what is this? What is this garbage? It's garbage. It's nonsense. But you know what it is? It's communism infiltrating into the West to destroy the Republic, destroy the constitutional values, to render the American people helpless without any guns and any arms. Okay?
Not here.
Not here. Not in Texas. No. And you know what? Minnesota's turning red. A lot of these places are turning red because we don't like it anymore. We don't want your communist kind. We don't need your communist kind to go into law-abiding restaurants and just throw everything into disarray. Blacks and whites and Jews have been getting along in America for over 30 years. Thank God for Martin Luther King for bringing peace to it. I watched The Last Dance on Netflix. I don't support Netflix, but I watched The Last Dance. And I saw in the 80s and the 90s and even the early 2000s, black people, white people living together, breathing together, watching sports together. How I arrived in America in 1995. I never saw white bathrooms only and blue bathrooms only and we can't talk to the blackie and we can't talk to the whitey. Nothing. There's been nothing. I lived in California. I lived in Atlanta, Georgia for 25 years of my life, man. All black-owned businesses, wonderful. Herman Cain, the great late Herman Cain, who died from the virus. He was one of the presidential nominees. I talked to him on a show one time. Wonderful gentleman, and good people all around. There was never this segregation. There was never this systemic racism. There was never this Black Lives Matter communist cult that was forcing people to put up your hand or we're going to destroy your good meals. And going into and vandalizing, and I mean, we've never seen this. The reason why we're seeing it, folks, is because the communist spectre is on the verge of collapse and is doing everything it can to full-fledgedly destroy the Constitution. But guess what? It ain't going to happen. Because the more of this vicious, just outrageous radicalism, the more it commences in the streets of America, the more people are going to be like, you know what? Because Americans don't they can't handle this. This is they don't want it.
They're already fed up. A lot of people are fed up.
They're fed up. Blacks, whites, Jews, Christians, Muslims, they don't want it. Yeah. Even the black communities, they don't want it. They're leaving Black Lives Matter. They're like, we're not touching this stuff. This is radical. This is radical. We don't want it. You're destroying our own nations. You're destroying our own. You're destroying our own communities. We're trying to get to work. We can't get to work. You're blocking all the sidelines. You're blocking all the highways. What are you people doing?
Yeah.
You're victims. You're a bunch of losers. You care about nothing but violence and degradation and struggle, and only about yourselves. Because if you really gave a crap, you would be standing outside every single Planned Parenthood with a flamethrower, waiting to burn them down when all the employees go. Because 400,000 to 1 million black babies wiped out.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. 300,000 to 300,000 minimum a year are being killed. And and if you look into Planned Parenthood and the eugenicists and the extermination of Margaret Sanger, who worked with the Nazis, who worked with the communists, and who worked with the eugenicists in America to manipulate the black pastors. They even try to get together with Martin Luther King and say, oh, it's good for the black community. But she wanted to wipe out in inverted commas, the N population, the Negro population. This is what she said.
Yeah.
Population. She said that. So don't tell me that you're for black. Come on, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's definitely ridiculous. We're in an upside down world right now, man. Everything's just completely. Nothing makes sense, and it's gonna get worse. I mean, like you said, closer to election, whether Trump loses, which is not gonna happen, but if that were to happen, you know, how you know that this is all bullshit is because the Democratic Party's already said, you know, if we don't win, you know, there's not going to be any kind of peace in the streets. And if we do win, you know, we're going to stop everything, which means if we win, we're just going to magically make everything disappear, because it's just like the KKK. They're like that arm of the Democratic Party, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, just like the KKK. They're just using them as foot soldiers to get their point across. And that's how it goes.
I've wanted to go on a broad spectrum with you tonight, not only with Falun Gong and the communist spectre, but how it is relating into America, because I'm sure a lot of your viewers, your listeners, will get tired of just talking about China. They want to make sure that there is some kind of relation that they can feel, so they can be like, well, what can we do? Why should we care? Well, now, how I put it into perspective, in terms of relating it to communist minions like the radical left, the CCP virus, climate change. Climate change has a huge thing to do with the communist spectre. Climate change and how the carbon taxes and the Green New Deal. Okay, this is all how communism is behind environmentalism. Okay, how Marx's roots in environmental movements. Ecological Marxism, ecological socialism, making green the new red. I mean, climate change, the suppression of opposing voices, consensus in climate science. I mean, it's really, really, really. I mean, it's all here, black and white. So that's why I implore people to read the Epoch Times, the Spectre of Communism, How It's Ruling the World.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, it's just going to be an entire shit show until the elections happen. You can thank AOC for that. You can thank Biden for that. You can thank fucking Beto for that piece of shit too. I'm from El Paso, where he's from, so I know all about that dude. There's no way he's going to be coming for AR-15s or any of that shit, because that ain't going to happen. I guarantee you that. And we're in for a wild ride until the elections happen, and even afterwards, you know, because like I said, Trump's going to win no matter what anybody thinks.
No matter what.
There's just not going to be any kind of peace after that.
we're on the verge of a civil war. They want a global reset. I'm not sure if Trump can save the US dollar. That's why everyone's going into crypto. But what's crypto going to do when your cell phones and your internet go down? What's going to happen then? How are you going to trade?
Make sure you buy gold, everybody.
Buy gold and silver.
Silver.
Absolutely. Let's talk about climate change for a second. Why it is linked to communism? It's a hot topic in today's society, right? So with celebrities, media personalities, how dare you, Greta Thunberg, politicians and members, you know. The most frequently heard assertion is that the emission of greenhouse gases by humans has caused global warming that will lead to climate change. And these advocates claim that this conclusion is reached through scientific consensus and that the science is settled. And to some environmentalists, people who reject this conclusion are not only considered anti-science, but also anti-humanity. The voice of those who oppose the prevailing view are stifled, seldom appearing in the media or academic journals. However, many members of the scientific community, and former US Department of Energy Undersecretary Stephen Koonin, have written that climate science isn't in fact settled, and that we lack the knowledge needed to make sound climate policy. But the thing is that the public is largely unaware of the intense debates within climate science, and how communism is what do you call it? The communism is tied into this. Is that I want to just share this with you. How this is so much here that I can share with you, but how communism has infiltrated. It's opposing the views of other people. It's demonizing, attacking other people, slandering other people, and most importantly, scapegoating anyone who goes against the narrative of the left. Oh, you're racist. Oh, so you don't support Black Lives Matter? You're racist. Oh, you don't stand at the NFL when everyone's in solidarity and so-called communist unity? Oh, you're a racist. Oh, you're anti-American. But you're burning the flags. You're going into the neighborhoods and screaming, "Give us back your property. This was once a Black-owned neighborhood." I'm like, whoa, I'm not nothing to do with that. I'm paying rent like everybody else. Okay?
Yeah.
So what? But that's the projection, right? That's the scapegoating. That's the victim mentality. That's the deception. That's the inciting hatred.
Anytime you hear anybody say this, the science is settled, you can be rest assured that person is full of shit. Because every time I hear that, oh, well, the science is settled. Oh, with who? Like what? Maybe like 100 scientists that you talk to all agree with, with the same thing. But what about everybody else? Everybody, they're just full of shit.
It's crazy. It's just it's really bad. I mean, a compulsory political program is not the answer to the environmental problems we face. And it's not. And also, the tighter the regulations come, the tighter the political spectrum comes, the more technology we have, it's only going to place us in a box. We need upright policies. We need humanity must restore its traditions. I mean, improve the morality and find its way back to a path set by the divine. Okay, I mean, in doing so, people will naturally come together in harmony, black and white. When you make it a black and white issue, you're failing to realize the spiritual connection between humanity. And that is why when there's so much emphasis placed on science or politics or color or creed or gender or nationality, you are failing to you're failing to focus on the foundation that all men are created equal under the constitutional values of the United States Constitution.
Yeah. And
you have the right to pursue liberty and justice, and the pursuit of happiness, and the Bill of Rights. And now it's interpreted in so many ways. I'm like, no, it's not interpreted in so many ways. It's very simple. We have the greatest constitution in the law. We have the greatest country. The reason why making America great again is so important in this day and time is not because of the businesses we've lost, or because of the bloodshed that was being shed over these riots and these protesting. It's because making America great again is combating the very evil that has destroyed and caused all this destruction, caused all this this inciting of hatefulness, causing all this division, and causing a civil war that's about to commence in America. Communism, the communist spectre. And that's why we have to support Trump more importantly than anything before. Because if we do not, and he doesn't come in, or he gets assassinated, or Joe Biden and Kamala Harris come in, or any of these radical leftist thugs,
Right.
America, as we know, ladies and gentlemen, is done for. It's done for. And we have the communist spectre and the demonic barbarians at the gate. At the gate. America is on the verge of collapse if we do not have, but it will not collapse. China will collapse. The Communist Party will collapse. And America, the eagle has been wounded, no doubt about that, over decades of corrupt communistic tactics to destroy the American society, to rob the American dignity, to dismantle the fabric of the great American Constitution and our values and our families and our heritage and our traditions and our founding fathers, and create a kind of scapegoat, Marxist psyop, racism to divide people. It's got nothing to do with racism. It's got to do with the communist ideology, liberalism, socialism, disguised as communism, to destroy America, install a communist-style system in America, and then use a virus, so to speak, by the globalist cabal to depopulate the United States and the world and control us fundamentally as slaves. And that's what Trump is trying to do. He's anti-globalist, he's anti-communist, he's American, he's for America, and I don't think he's actually rolling out vaccines. I hope he's not. I think he's against vaccines.
And well, he keeps talking about that we're going to have them before the election, and there maybe some just sitting there thinking like, oh my God, like, I hope he's just bluffing.
I hope he's just bluffing. I really do hope so too, because that's ridiculous. That's exactly what the globalists want.
Yeah, because
and the mark of the chip in the microchip, mark of the beast, right?
Yeah, because Dr. Gates over there he's pushing hard for his vaccine as well.
Hard. And the freaking virus is in the vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife she works at a hospital and she had to get her flu shot, and I was just like, no, she got it, and I thought she was gonna tell me before she got it, but she got it she told me after she got it, and I was like, oh man, why did you do that? You know, so it's yeah, there's no vaccines in our house whatsoever, so it's my son also is not been back. There's nothing. I don't get the flu shot or nasal, nothing at all.
No, nothing. I told my family too. But anyway, Paul, it's been such a pleasure and a blessing to be on your show. If I can just share a little bit more of links for your listeners and your viewers.
Absolutely.
If you want to learn about Falun Gong, it's a beautiful spiritual movement, and it's really good coming from a martial arts background, a yoga background, a Tai Chi background, a gym or workout background. A lot of people just, haven't got much time, and a lot of people want an immunity from viruses or illnesses or ailments. More importantly, you have to have the mindset. You have to stay positive. You have to believe in yourself. You really have to love yourself and really go to your core to build yourself up in a way that's strong, confident, and resilient to what is about to happen. I mean, we're going to go through a lot of time. We're in the eye of a storm. Within the next 40 days, it's going to get really, really crazy. Store up on food, store up on weapons, store up on ammunition, on generator. Learn to learn about your community, learn about your neighbors, and have a good community, because we're going to stop. There's going to be a lot of food shortages. There might be blackouts. God knows what's going to happen. There might be radical renegades and Black Lives Matter militants or Antifa thugs or narcos trying to take over your communities. I mean, they're really taking over your restaurants and your Trader Joe's, and just conceal and carry, protect your families. And I'm a God-fearing man. I'm a peaceful man. I'm not a pacifist. Yeah. I'm a warrior on the front lines, and so I just want to make sure that you guys are all prepared. But with Falun Gong, the exercises are really beautiful, really spiritual, really ancient, good for the body. Just try to cultivate yourselves in more of a truthful and compassionate and tolerant way. You know, the other day I went on a child trafficking raid with a couple of buddies of mine invited me. I was the first, maybe I don't really say this too much, but I went on one, and it was quite profound and beautiful. What you do in life, everybody, echoes in eternity. What is a man who cannot make the world a better place? And to fail to support evil, to fail to expose evil and to fail to support good is unacceptable. And so the biggest thing in life when being on the front lines, doing what I've done for humanity, for no recognition, for no fame and no fortune, little money, not for the podcast or for the work, but just a little money, teaching children. I went on a child trafficking raid. A couple of buddies invited me, and I went and we raided this guy's factory. And I opened a box, and there was a little child wrapped in cellophane, shivering, about a 5-year-old child. She looks up at me. I cut the cellophane, I bring her out, and I hold her in my arms. And from her shivering, she felt safe. And that was a very profound feeling in my life, seeing a child that was about to be shipped off to be entertainment for some high-rise CEO, because this is what they get. They get packages. They get big packages, stock option portfolios, big bonuses, 5-star hotels, and then a little package for entertainment. And these packages are 7-year-old children, 12-year-old children, 4-year and 5-year-olds. They torture the children. They extract the blood from the children. They sell it as the adrenochrome to the high elites. I'm not sure if you've heard about this.
Yep.
But this was a child that was going to be sold off, okay? And huge human trafficking, child trafficking in Bali, Indonesia, in Cambodia, in America, Georgia, Florida are big hubs, Indiana, big hubs, big networking pedophile ring underground. Pizzagate is all true, okay? It's all true. Comic Pizza, absolutely, okay? They try to deny that. The Hollywood elites, the politicians, the globalists. So when I rescued this child, 15 of them, on this mission, and I'll never forget it. It's never, sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, you come across something in life, an opportunity that passes you by in an instant, but you do it, and I went on it. There's no record of it. There's no record of it, because if we do, our lives are in danger.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't mention. And the next day, I heard that he was the higher ups killed the guy in the Red River. We found him in the Red River. They found him in the Red River, basically. The police found him in the Red River. Yeah. The guy that was a child trafficker, because he squealed like a pig after we cut him a little here, we cut him a little here, we just like nipped him, death of 1,000 cuts, and anyway, we got the information out of him, and didn't hurt him too much, but we just roughed him up a little bit, and he points out the children, and I'll never forget it. When I saw that child in my arms, that Vietnamese child, from the borders of China, because I'm on the northern Vietnam slope, so the borders of Dong Vai, Mia Vak, of Lao Cai, you've got these small little Hmong children, the tribal children of 54 dialectal tribes up in the borders of Vietnam. They don't speak any Vietnamese, they only speak their tribal languages. These children, they were trafficked. They were going to traffic to China from the Chinese gangs, and we stopped them. And brother, ladies and gentlemen, that feeling of safety, that's why what you do in life echoes in eternity. So anyway, I appreciate it. The links, faluninfo.net. Everything you need to know about Falun Gong. One website, I don't want to overwhelm people. faluninfo.net. faluninfo.net. Right. You also have endtransplantabuse.org, okay, where all the reports are found, all the books, all the updates, all the evidence, documentaries, you name it. For those who want to learn about the communist spectre and what is infiltrated into our lands, whether it's Vietnam or whether it's America or whatever, as I am an American citizen, the communist spectre of the Epoch Times, the spectre of communism, just type it in Google, the Epoch Times, EPOCH Times, the communist spectre editorial series, and you'll see it. It's free of charge. And I'll leave you with one more website. Those who want to learn about stoporganharvesting.org. So there's 3. They can sign a petition and go from there. But thank you, Paul. Thank you for letting me come on again. Hopefully I'm alive enough next time to share with you. And they don't come after me, because I'm risking my life here, man, and it's not easy. And now, we're on the verge of some serious times. So thank you, everybody, for letting me listen to you, or you listening to me. And thank you, Paul, for me being on your show.
Absolutely, my friend. Yeah, we'll definitely, if you guys want as well, you can find him on Twitter at truthseeker077. You can go ahead and follow him on there. He throws little updates here and there every once in a while. But yeah, absolutely. I have all the links that you sent me as well. I'll go ahead and link them down below for anybody that wants to go ahead and click on those. I'll also link the Epoch Times article that you just mentioned as well, down below as well. And so like I said, everybody that wants to follow him on Twitter, it's at truthseekers077. Mitch, my friend, I really appreciate you coming back on. We definitely have to have you back on, hopefully as we get closer to the elections, if not afterwards, or whenever you're free, we can definitely come back again, because China is definitely an issue that needs to stay present in the news, right? So we just can't let it be, one and done. We speak on things and then, everybody just forgets about it, because that's pretty much what's been happening. You get like a big story maybe once in a while, and then everybody just forgets about it again. And, they continue to do what they're doing out there. So we'll definitely have you back on again soon, hopefully before the elections, so we can kind of hold on, by the seat of our pants. Everybody's going to be in for a wild ride. So yeah, we'll definitely have to have you back on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Paul. A pleasure anytime. And please, if there's anyone else listening out there, that if you have a podcast community and anyone wants me on, please, I will more than willing to come on. As long as I have breath in my lungs and blood in my veins and I'm still alive, I would love to grace your show. And Paul, anytime, brother, anytime you want me on, I'm very grateful to be on. And even if it's one person that's listening and taking note of this, particularly about the Falun Gong, support the practice, support the movement, try the exercises there. It's a beautiful spiritual movement. And thanks for listening about what's going on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So everybody, I really appreciate you guys' time as well. Just before we go here, I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody that's listening to us in Sweden now. I know last time I had mentioned we were kind of all over the place in the Faroe Islands, the Netherlands, Colombia, España. We have a bunch of people in the UK, here in the States, obviously. But Sweden, we just picked up Sweden. So everybody out there in Sweden, really appreciate you guys stopping in and listening to the episode and listening to our podcast as well. Like I mentioned before, if you guys are on the go, you can find us on Spotify, Google and Apple Podcasts, as well as iHeartRadio. You can find us on Twitter at Defender Podcast, Instagram at Truth Defender Podcast, as well as Facebook Truth Defender Podcast. Like I mentioned before, if you have any questions or comments for myself or our guest or topic recommendations, you guys can give us an email or send us an email at thetruthDefender1776 at gmail.com. So until next time, I really appreciate you guys stopping in. I hope you guys stay safe out there, stay blessed, and stay frosty, everybody. Have a great one.